You walk into a movie theater telling yourself you'll be responsible today, just the small popcorn, $6, that's it. You get to the counter and glance at the menu. Small is $6. Large is $8. That feels expensive, until your eyes land on the middle option. Medium, $7.50. Now your brain starts doing math. 50 cents more for way more popcorn? Buying the medium suddenly feels stupid. So you buy the large. And you leave feeling clever, like you beat the system and maximized value. Except you didn't. You walked in planning to spend $6 and walked out spending $8. You didn't upgrade. You were guided. That medium popcorn isn't there for anyone to actually buy. It exists to change how the other two options feel. Remove it and you compare $6 to $8. Add it and suddenly you're comparing $7.50 to $8, and the expensive choice magically becomes reasonable. This is called the Decoy Effect, a pricing strategy designed to quietly push you toward a higher purchase without a single salesperson saying a word. The company doesn't upsell you. You upsell yourself. Here's the uncomfortable part. Your brain was never designed to understand price in isolation. If I showed you a random metal engine piston and asked how much it costs, you wouldn't know where to begin. $50, $500, $5,000. The number has no meaning without a reference point. Humans don't evaluate value absolutely, we evaluate it relatively. We don't naturally ask, what is this worth? We ask, what is this worth compared to that? And that tiny difference is where modern marketing lives. Companies don't actually need to prove a product is cheap. They only need to surround it with options that make it feel reasonable. Your brain scans choices like a comparison engine, constantly searching for contrast instead of truth. Once multiple prices appear side by side, perception reshapes itself automatically. The expensive option doesn't become affordable, it becomes defensible. You stop judging the cost and start judging the difference. And the moment your decision becomes about differences instead of dollars, the seller is no longer competing on price. They're controlling your frame of reference. Marketing isn't selling products. It's selling comparisons. Now we can see how the trick actually works. With only two options, small for $6 and large for $8, the decision is simple. You're deciding whether the extra popcorn is worth $2 more. It's a budgeting question. But the moment the medium appears at $7.50, the structure changes. The medium is close enough to the large in price, but clearly worse in quantity. That makes the large dominated in every meaningful way. In behavioral economics, this is called asymmetric dominance. One option exists purely to lose so another can win. And once your brain notices that the large crushes the medium in value per ounce, the small stops being part of the comparison entirely. You're no longer asking, should I spend $8? You're asking, which choice makes me look smarter? The decision shifts from spending to optimization. The large feels rational, the medium feels foolish, and the small becomes invisible. The presence of a bad option doesn't just influence the choice, it rewrites the question your brain thinks it's answering. Now scale this up from popcorn to one of the most valuable companies on earth. When you shop for a phone, you rarely encounter a single clean price. You see a ladder. The base model, 64 gigabytes for $399. That feels safe, a clear budget decision. Then you notice the next tier, 256 gigabytes for $549. The jump is large enough to hurt, but now a new fear appears. Photos, videos, apps, updates, 64 suddenly feels temporary. You start imagining future inconvenience. And then, sitting just above it, is the Pro model at $699. At this point your brain is no longer anchored to $400. It's anchored to $549. So the internal question changes. You're not deciding whether a $699 phone is expensive. You're deciding whether the better camera, battery, and screen are worth a little more than what you already accepted as reasonable. The middle tier exists to create psychological tension. Too expensive to feel safe, too limited to feel satisfying. The Pro resolves that tension. So you climb. Consumers walk in planning to spend $399 and walk out defending a $699 purchase as rational optimization. The company didn't convince you to buy the expensive phone. The pricing structure convinced you that stopping in the middle would be the mistake. This isn't just clever marketing intuition, it was tested academically. In a famous subscription experiment, people were given 3 choices: a web-only subscription for $59, a print-only subscription for $125, and a web plus print combo also for $125. Nobody really wanted print by itself. But its existence made the combo look like a steal. You were getting the website for free. Most people chose the $125 bundle because it felt like maximizing value. Then researchers removed the middle option. Now the page showed only $59 web access and the $125 combo. Instantly, preferences flipped. The majority chose the cheaper plan. The expensive option didn't change. The value didn't change. Only the comparison changed. That useless middle option was never meant to be purchased. It was a psychological anchor, the ugly brother whose only job was to make another choice look attractive. Now bring it back to everyday life, where this quietly drains money instead of making headlines. At a coffee shop you see 3 sizes: tall, grande, venti. The price jump between the middle and the large is usually just a few cents per ounce cheaper, and your brain locks onto efficiency. You tell yourself the large is the better deal, but that logic only works if you actually needed more caffeine. You didn't save money, you bought extra consumption. The same structure shows up in streaming subscriptions. Open a pricing page and you'll see 3 columns, one intentionally limited, one expensive, and one highlighted as most popular. That middle tier isn't popular because it's perfect. It's popular because the cheaper plan feels restricted and the premium feels excessive. The layout funnels you into the option engineered to feel balanced. Once again, you're not deciding what you need, you're choosing which compromise feels smartest, and the platform gets a few extra dollars every month without ever raising the base price. The real power of this effect shows up when the numbers get big. At a dealership you see a car advertised from $30,000. That's your anchor. Then you learn the base model feels stripped down: cloth seats, basic screen, missing features. Next comes the premium at $38,000. Painful jump. But right beside it sits the limited trim at $40,000 with the one feature you actually care about. Now your brain isn't comparing 30 to 40 anymore. You're comparing 38 to 40. You didn't jump $10,000. You jumped 2. The decoy reframes the upgrade into a tiny step instead of a huge decision. Real estate works the same way. A 1-bedroom apartment is $2,000. The 2-bedroom is $2,800. Then there's the 2-bedroom with a view at $2,900. Suddenly $900 more per month feels reasonable because the comparison shrank to just $100. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Why wouldn't I take the better one?" The biggest purchases in your life aren't escalations of need, they're escalations of reference points. Individually these decisions feel harmless. 40 extra cents for a larger coffee. A few more dollars for the better streaming plan. 2,000 more for the nicer trim spread across monthly payments. Each one feels optimized, you extracted the most value per dollar. But optimization isn't the same as saving. If you add 40 cents to a daily habit, that's around $150 a year. Layer on subscriptions, storage upgrades, bundle plans, and monthly financing bumps, and suddenly you're not leaking dollars, you're leaking thousands. The decoy effect turns budgeting into a series of tiny rationalizations. You believe you're minimizing waste while you're actually maximizing spending. The system doesn't break your finances in one decision. It slowly inflates your lifestyle through dozens of logical ones. So how do you fight something built into human psychology? You don't try to become perfectly rational, you change the rules of engagement. First, learn to spot the ugly brother. Whenever 3 options exist, assume one was designed to manipulate the other 2. The moment you identify it, the spell weakens because you're evaluating intent, not value. Second, decide before you see the prices. Know what you need in advance and treat the menu as confirmation, not inspiration. If 64 gigabytes works for you, the other numbers are noise. Third, ignore price per ounce math. You can't deposit efficiency into a bank account, only dollars you never spent. A bigger size you didn't need is not savings, it's delayed waste. When you stop comparing and start defining sufficiency, the system loses leverage. Because wealth doesn't begin when prices look reasonable. Wealth begins the moment comparison stops.